Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something today that changed the course of my entire life. You've got to force your mind to be quiet. Because if you don't, the noise in your head will drown out every dream you've ever had. See, I used to think hustle was all about grinding 24/7, staying loud, keeping busy. But the older I got, the more I understood. Silence is strength. Silence is power. The most powerful people I've ever met, they don't move with noise. They move with calm clarity. A noisy mind will keep you from hearing the voice of your purpose. That's the truth. Most people don't realize that their greatest obstacle isn't the world outside, it's the storm inside their own head. Your purpose isn't something that screams at you. It doesn't demand attention. It speaks in a whisper. It's quiet, subtle, patient. But when your mind is filled with worry, doubt, stress, fear, comparison, and the constant buzz of the world, you can't hear it. You miss it. And not because it's not there, but because you're too distracted to recognize it. Think about how often your mind is spinning. You wake up in the morning, and before you even open your eyes fully, your brain's already racing. What do I have to do today? What if I fail? What if I don't have enough? What will people think? You grab your phone, and now you're on social media comparing your life to a highlight reel. That voice of your purpose, it doesn't stand a chance in all that noise. You go all day chasing things that don't really matter, listening to thoughts that don't even belong to you, and then wonder why you feel lost. You're not lost. You're just too loud on the inside to hear your way forward. We all want clarity. We all want direction. But clarity doesn't come in chaos. It comes in calm. Direction doesn't show up in confusion. It shows up in stillness. The mind is a powerful tool, but it's also a dangerous weapon when it's undisciplined. When it's filled with noise, it can convince you of lies. It can tell you you're not good enough, that you don't have what it takes, that your time is past, that your dream is too big. And if you're not careful, you'll believe those lies. You'll make decisions based on noise. You'll start building a life that's not even aligned with your calling, just a response to fear, to insecurity, to what the world expects. That's why learning to silence your mind isn't just about peace. It's about survival. It's about focus. It's about tuning out everything that doesn't serve you so you can tune in to the one thing that does, your purpose. Your mind is constantly talking, and most of the time it's on autopilot. It's repeating old beliefs, old fears, old limitations. And if you never take control of it, if you never press pause, if you never say, hold up, this isn't truth, then you never get to hear the deeper part of yourself that knows why you here. The voice of purpose doesn't argue. It doesn't push. It waits. It waits for you to quiet down, to get still enough to listen. And listening is a skill, not an accident. You got to create space for it. You got to sit in the silence. You got to pull away from the constant scroll, the endless input, the nonstop conversations, the background noise of opinions, of expectations, of pressure. Because as long as all that's going on, you'll keep missing the one voice that actually matters. There's something inside you that's been trying to get your attention for a long time. It's been calling you to more, but you haven't heard it because your mind is too full of everything else, full of regret from the past, full of worry about the future, full of voices that aren't even yours. When the mind is noisy, it drowns out the divine. It drowns out the soul. It drowns out that inner pull that's trying to guide you toward your real assignment. And that's the tragedy. So many people live their whole lives following the noise, never realizing they were built for something far greater. Silence is not weakness. It is a weapon for focus. In today's world, people confuse noise with strength. They think being loud means being powerful. They think making the most noise in the room means You're the leader. But real power doesn't need to shout. Real strength doesn't always show up with volume. It shows up with direction, clarity, and the ability to lock in when everyone else is scattered. The people who make the biggest impact in life are not the ones who talk the most, but the ones who know how to silence the world and dial into their vision. We live in an age where distraction is the norm. Notifications, conversations, headlines, likes, opinions, everything trying to grab your attention. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your whole life reacting instead of creating. You'll waste your energy on things that have nothing to do with your purpose. That's what noise does. It scatters your power. It divides your focus. It steals your ability to think clearly. And that's why silence isn't a weakness. It's a strategy. It's what strong people use to center themselves, to preserve their energy, to reconnect with their why. When you choose silence, you're not running from the world. You're taking charge of how the world gets to influence you. You're saying, I decide what enters my mind. I decide what I focus on. That's power. That's discipline. Because it's easy to go along with the noise. It's easy to stay busy and talk about everything and accomplish nothing. But when you start making silence part of your life, you become dangerous, not in a destructive way, but in a focused, unshakable, mission-driven way. You start to see more. You start to hear what others miss. Because while they're busy performing, you're planning. While they're reacting, you're preparing. And that kind of preparation, that kind of focus, it can't be developed in chaos. It can't be nurtured in constant conversation. It only grows in silence. Silence is where confidence is built. It's where direction becomes clear. You don't have to convince anybody of anything when you know who you are and where you're going. And you find that out not by talking more, but by listening more. Listening to your gut. Listening to God. Listening to the wisdom that only shows up when the noise dies down. Some people fear silence because it forces them to face themselves. It brings up thoughts they've buried, feelings they've avoided, truths they don't want to acknowledge. But here's what they don't realize. Facing those things is what makes you strong. Sitting with that silence is what sharpens your mind and strengthens your character. It shows you what matters and what doesn't. It clears out the distractions so the real priorities can rise to the surface. When you can be alone with your thoughts and not be afraid, when you can sit in stillness and not need validation, that's real power. Focusing isn't built through multitasking, it's built through elimination. And silence helps you eliminate what doesn't belong. It helps you strip away the unnecessary, the noisy, the fake. You start seeing what's real. You start hearing your own voice again, the one that's been buried under everyone else's expectations. And that voice is the only one that can guide you to your destiny. Not the crowd, not the critics, not the chaos. You need silence to hear your own instruction. People think they lose momentum when they step back into silence, but they're wrong. Silence doesn't slow you down. It speeds you up in the right direction. It gathers all your power and channels it where it counts. And when your focus is tight, your results explode. That's why silence is not weakness, it's a weapon. And the most focused warriors are always the quietest before the breakthrough. Peace is a choice, not a gift from the world. Most people spend their entire lives chasing peace like it's something they can stumble upon out there in the world. They think if they could just fix their circumstances, get the right job, find the right person, earn a certain amount of money, or make their life look a certain way, then peace will show up and stay. But the truth is, peace doesn't come from what you have. It comes from what you decide. It's not waiting for you on the other side of success. It's waiting for you inside your mindset right now, in the middle of the mess, if you choose it. The world is never going to stop spinning. There's always going to be chaos, drama, noise, uncertainty, and problems that demand your attention. If you think you'll only find peace when the world finally calms down, you'll be waiting your whole life. Life doesn't give peace, it gives challenges. And those challenges don't care about your mood, your plans, or your desire to rest. They show up uninvited over and over again. So if you're depending on things going your way to feel calm, you'll be up and down forever. That's why peace has to be a choice. It has to be something you decide to protect and prioritize regardless of what's going on around you. Some people are addicted to chaos without realizing. They're so used to being stressed, anxious, and reactive that peace feels foreign to them. Stillness makes them uncomfortable because they've tied their identity to survival mode. But peace doesn't mean everything is perfect. It means you've made up your mind to not let what's happening outside control what's happening inside. It means you've taken authority over your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions, and that authority doesn't come easy. It comes from choosing peace over and over again, even when it's inconvenient, even when it doesn't feel natural, even when it goes against your habit of panic. The most powerful people are not the loudest or the most aggressive. They're the ones who can stay calm under pressure. They're the ones who walk into chaos and don't let it shake them. That kind of calm doesn't come from personality. It comes from practice. It comes from choosing peace every time the opportunity to panic shows up. Every time someone disrespects you, every time the plan falls apart, every time fear knocks on your door, you have the option to protect your peace or surrender it. And too many people give it away without realizing it's the most valuable thing they have. Peace allows you to think clearly. It allows you to make wise decisions, to respond instead of react, to see the situation for what it is instead of what your emotions are telling you. Without peace, you become a slave to every situation, every mood, every voice. You start living by reaction, not by intention. And that's a dangerous place to be because the world will always give you something to react to. But when you choose peace, you step into control. You decide what matters. You decide what deserves your energy. You become rooted instead of rattled. That's what sets leaders apart from followers. The ability to stay calm in the middle of the storm. Choosing peace doesn't mean you ignore problems or pretend everything's fine. It means you handle problems from a stable place, from a mindset that's not shaken every time something changes. It means you refuse to be tossed around by every emotion, every opinion, every fear. It means you anchor yourself in something deeper, something no one else can give you or take away from you. And that kind of peace only comes when you decide to create it within yourself, not wait for it to be delivered from the outside. You build it thought by thought, choice by choice, day by day. It becomes a habit, a mindset, a lifestyle you commit to because you know the world will never stop trying to disturb it. The mind must be trained like a muscle to obey, not wander. Just like your body won't get stronger unless you put it through discipline and repetition, your mind won't get sharper unless you start taking control of it. Most people treat their mind like it's the boss, letting every thought run wild, letting fear make decisions, letting doubt lead the way, and then they wonder why their life feels unstable. The truth is, if your mind isn't trained, your potential stays locked away. You will be capable of greatness, but live stuck in confusion, hesitation, and distraction because your thoughts are running the show. The mind loves comfort. It loves routine, even if that routine is built on fear, procrastination, or insecurity. Left untrained, it will always choose the easy path. It will avoid discomfort, It will talk you out of growth. It will convince you to stay small. But when you start training your mind, you stop letting it wander into old habits. You start telling it where to go instead of letting it drag you into places you don't belong. Just like an athlete shows up daily to train, to push, to sweat, to build discipline, you got to do the same with your thoughts. You've got to show up with consistency, not just when you feel inspired or motivated. Training the mind means becoming intentional about what you think, what you believe, and what you allow. You can't afford to let your mind go on autopilot. You've got to check it. You've got to challenge it. When fear starts speaking, you've got to ask, is this real or just a story I've believed for too long? When doubt tries to convince you to back down, you've got to replace it with the truth. You've got to feed your mind thoughts that build you, not thoughts that break you. That's training. That's how you gain mental control. Not by hoping for peace, but by practicing it over and over again until it becomes your new default. Most people underestimate how powerful a trained mind is. A trained mind doesn't panic under pressure. It doesn't give in to the emotions of the moment. It holds its ground. It focuses. It endures. That kind of strength doesn't come naturally. It comes from work. It comes from choosing discipline when your emotions are begging for chaos. It comes from pushing your mind to stay locked in when every distraction is calling your name. That's how mental toughness is built. Not in the easy moments, but in the hard ones when quitting feels easier than staying focused. You don't train the mind once and walk away. It's a lifelong process. Every new level of your life will challenge your mind in new ways. The same thoughts that helped you survive one season might not serve you in the next. That's why the training never stops. Just like your body weakens if you stop exercising, your mind drifts if you stop checking it. It becomes reactive, emotional, and undisciplined again. And an undisciplined mind can't carry you through the storms of life. It will break under pressure. But a trained mind becomes your strongest asset. It becomes your guide, your guard, your strength. Training your mind also means creating mental boundaries. You don't allow just anything to take up space in your thoughts. You don't entertain every negative opinion, every limiting belief, every voice that tries to shrink you. You become selective. You become protective because you understand that whatever lives in your mind will eventually show up in your actions, and your actions will create your future. So if your future matters to you, your mindset has to matter even more. You put in the reps. You practice stillness. You practice focus. You replace fear with faith, noise with clarity, reaction with intention. You teach your mind how to obey, how to listen, how to follow your direction instead of running wild in 1,000 different directions. Your greatest breakthroughs come in stillness, not chaos. Most people believe that success is born in the middle of action, in constant hustle, in doing more, chasing more, moving faster. But what they don't understand is that breakthrough, the kind that transforms your life from the inside out, doesn't show up in noise. It comes quietly. It shows up when you slow down enough to hear it. Stillness isn't just the absence of motion. It's the presence of awareness. It's the place where clarity rises, where insight speaks, where vision becomes visible. Without stillness, you run the risk of confusing activity with progress and motion with purpose. The world teaches you to keep moving, to stay busy, to always be working. But busyness doesn't always mean you're headed in the right direction. You can be sprinting full speed in the wrong lane and still feel productive. That's why chaos is so dangerous. It tricks you into thinking that loud means important. that urgent means meaningful, that being overwhelmed is just part of being successful. But real success requires alignment. It requires reflection. And that only comes when you stop long enough to look within. Stillness creates the space for self-awareness. And self-awareness is the foundation of every breakthrough. In stillness, the fog starts to lift. You begin to see what matters and what's just noise. You start to recognize the difference between pressure you're supposed to carry and pressure you were never meant to hold. In the silence, your soul starts to speak. Your inner voice, the one that's been drowned out by external domains and distractions, finally gets a chance to rise. And when it does, it brings answers. It brings direction. It reminds you of your why. Those reminders don't come when you're moving too fast to listen. They come when you pause long enough to hear the truth underneath all the chaos. Breakthrough is not just about solving problems. It's about understanding yourself in a deeper way. It's about becoming someone new, not just doing something new. That kind of transformation doesn't happen while you're reacting to 100 things. It happens in the quiet spaces between moments. It happens when you create room in your mind, in your day, in your heart to listen for something deeper than your fears. Stillness is not weakness. It's not laziness. It's a form of strength that requires discipline. It takes courage to stop when the world tells you to keep going. It takes boldness to be still when everything around you says rush. In stillness, ideas come that you didn't even know were waiting for you. Solutions that felt impossible before suddenly seem clear. New thoughts rise from a deeper place because you finally gave them a space to grow. Chaos crowds creativity. Stillness gives it permission to breathe. Some of the greatest inventions, the most life-changing ideas, the boldest decisions were born out of moments of quiet thought, deep reflection, uninterrupted clarity. But you don't get those moments if your life is full of noise all the time. You don't access those breakthroughs if you don't learn to stop. You also heal in stillness. The mind can't recover in chaos. The heart can't find peace while it's constantly being triggered and overwhelmed. Stillness is where you catch your breath. It's where you regroup, rebuild, and refocus. It's the place where your strength gets recharged, not by doing more, but by doing less with more meaning. Without it, you stay drained, scattered, and exhausted. Busy but empty. But when you practice stillness, you start filling up again. You get back in touch with what matters. You remember who you are without all the labels, expectations, and pressure. Stillness teaches you patience. It teaches you timing. It teaches you to wait for the right moment instead of forcing the wrong one. And that kind of wisdom leads to better decisions, stronger relationships, deeper confidence. Chaos might give you short-term adrenaline, but stillness gives you long-term wisdom. The kind that helps you stop chasing and start attracting. The kind that grounds you so deeply you stop being shaken by every little storm around you. Stop being shaken by every little storm around you. When the mind is quiet, clarity becomes louder than fear. In a world full of distractions, it's easy for fear to be the dominant voice. It whispers doubt in your ear the moment you try something new. It floods your thoughts with uncertainty when you're about to make a bold move. And it magnifies every possible risk until you can't see anything else. But that's only when your mind is loud and unsettled. Because when the mind is noisy, fear thrives. It uses confusion as its playground. It multiplies in mental chaos. But when you quiet your mind, fear loses its power. You begin to see it for what it is, a voice. not a fact. A feeling, not a command. Most people don't realize that fear is not the problem. The real problem is the lack of clarity. When you're not clear on who you are, what you want, and why you're doing something, fear has room to grow. It fills in the blanks with doubt. It paints worst-case scenarios where you should be seeing possibilities. But when your mind is still and your thoughts are centered, something powerful happens. You get clarity, and clarity is stronger than fear. Clarity doesn't eliminate risk, but it puts risk in perspective. It doesn't silence every worry, but it teaches you how to navigate through them without losing your direction. A quiet mind isn't an empty mind, it's a focused mind. It's a mind that's not reacting to everything around it. It's a mind that listens before it speaks, observes before it judges, and reflects before it acts. That kind of mental space doesn't happen by accident. It's created through intention. You have to take back control of your mental environment. You have to stop letting fear speak uninterrupted. When you quiet your mind, you create a boundary between you and the fear. You recognize that you don't have to believe everything you think, and you definitely don't have to obey every fear that shows up. Clarity grows in silence. It shows up when you stop overanalyzing and start listening to your inner voice, your intuition, your instincts. That voice often gets drowned out in the noise of panic, pressure, and outside opinions, but it never disappears. It's always there, waiting for you to be still enough to hear it. And when it speaks, it doesn't sound like fear. It sounds like truth. It sounds like direction. It reminds you of your purpose and brings you back to what matters most. That's why quiet in the mind is not just a mental health practice. It's a leadership skill, a success strategy, a survival tool. You won't find clarity by trying to outthink fear. You find it by stepping away from the noise, by breathing deeper, by separating facts from feelings. In that space, you begin to see clearly. You begin to feel grounded again. And the louder that clarity becomes, the smaller fear starts to feel. You realize you were never truly stuck. You were just surrounded by too much noise to see the way forward. When the mind is quiet, what matters stands out. What doesn't falls away. And in that stillness, you begin to move with confidence instead of hesitation, with faith instead of doubt, with courage instead of fear.